Okay, Shalom Aleichem. A good night of Shabbos. It's Erev Shabbos Kodesh. Parshas Miketz, Gimel Tevis, it's Zeis Chanukah. And I am being selfish. I am sitting outside in windy South Florida. And there's going to be a little background noise from the wind. But I made a hachlote that I'm gewinnst in a Platz, wo es da Bäume ist da Luft und man kann sehen dem Himmel. That means there's trees and there's air and you can see the sky. I live in Brooklyn, I see bricks and mortar. So I made the decision to record the class outside, even though it's going to be a little bit noisy from the periodic winds, maybe a little bit more than a little bit noisy. You'll have to forgive me, and I hope you'll be able to hear the shiur well. I'm putting the mic a little closer to my mouth than I normally do, to a little bit offset the wind. But I'm doing it because the Eibishter made his world, Brias, No'es, Yafes, V'teves, Lehanes, Behem, B'nei Adam. So I'm allowing myself to be Mahane as I'm giving this shiur by sitting outside. Rabbi Yossi, in the last week and a half, for me it's 2 weeks, but for you, if you're up to date with me, which I can't imagine how you could be, we've been doing Basi Legani Finone business of. I think this is our 6th class, because we had one class on the Hakdama. This is Chavdalet, all Chavdalet, from 60 years ago, the Maamar, Tzidkas Pirzoni Yisrael, Tzidkas Pirzoni Yisrael. That was one class, which was a Maamar that was connected to the Rebbes Chasana, but it was also connected to Yud Shvat, because it was Shabbos Pashas B'Shalach. And the Iker Toisefes of this Maamar was the Hadgosha, not so much on the Eitzeh Shal Maila, but on the Eitzeh Shal Yiras Shamayim. And the Rebbe said in that shiur, that Maamar, the Eitzeh Shal Yiras Shamayim is even higher than Yechida. Even Yechida is a tzir. The Gabe Madreg of Eitzeh Shal Yiras Shamayim. The second class, which was 5 amudim, was the Chazara of the Basi Legani until Peirik Yudalit. That was the second class. Then the third class and the fourth class was explaining the idea of Ein Seif Dimtza Lamata. Mata. Ein Seif Lamayla Den Ketz will be discussed next year. Tafshin Tezvav, Heistes Tafshin Pehei. Lying noch the Bias HaMashiach, Mashiach Zaken, the Gals Malach HaMashiach. But these two prakim, Yud Gimel and Yudal, spoke about Ein Seif Lamata Adin Tachlis. So in the third shiur and the fourth shiur, we talked about Ein Seif Lamata Adin Tachlis in terms of the of Tzimtzum, and the idea that the Eibush is not just Machaye, he's also Mahave, and the idea that the Elokus is Nemshach and Teklipa. And not only Klipa is Klayach, which the Eibush created, but even Im Esek Shamayim Sham Oto Vatziyash Eli Neka, and the Rebbe explained the difference between this pasuk and this Maamar Chazal. Vatziyash Eli Neka is Gehenim, which means klipas that are created to be Dei Yodam. So in the Maamar Chazal, that the Eibishter is Mahavim Kanid Eim Avei Kinim, is talking about the highest madrigas of Kedusha to the lowest madrigas of the Umazeh, which are part of the Bria itself. And then when he brings the pasuk Im Esek Shamayim Sham Oto Vatziyash She'el goes on the Inyan of Klipa, which is Bidei Yodam. The people create through Avedis, whether it's in Yad Rishus, Nam Aviser, and as the Rebbe explained over and over again in this Maamar, the worst kind of Klipa is using the Teda against the Teda. That was the third of the fourth class. And then we had 2 more classes. And the 2 more classes was the Haskedi Oimek of the Hemsh, of the Peirik. The idea that even though Ein Seif is found everywhere, it's in such a way that nothing touches the Ein Seif. It's a one-way relationship. It's a mania and it's not no. It touches and it's not being touched. It affects in Bria, in Havoya, and in Chayis, but the Ein Seif is never touched. And the Lishenas that we had from the Fidik of his Maamar were it's Beli Spoilers, it's Beli Shinui, and Beli Sarvus. Those are the 3 expressions. And we had two classes that explained, that we read, this Perek, I think it was Vav Zayin and Ches of the Maamar of our Rebbe, that explained this second half of the Perek. Where even though Ein Seif Lamata Adein Tachlis, Ein Seif is Lamata and Tachlis in the kind of way that Ein Seif touches everything, creates everything, gives life to everything, including Klipa, but in a way that the Klipa has no touching on the Lakush, on the Eibishter himself. And I'm ready to finish. I'm doing Perek tests, and you must be honest that I put a lot into this. I worked very hard. I put a lot in, and yet there's in Yodam that I feel like, especially from the last class, we gave the Piratum about Eira Shemesh. There's still details in this Maamar that I could have explored better, that I could have prepared better, that I could have explained better, but I was just talking to my father Zogazunzain on the phone. So I told him that I heard from Rebbe Yamin Klein Alav Shalom, the Rebbe's secretary, who was my wife's uncle, that the Rebbe used to work on the Likut Sichas for many hours, I don't know, 6, 7, 8 hours a week. The Rebbe spent much time being Magiyah the Likut, a lot of time being Magiyah the Likut. And of course, until Memches, the Rebbe was Magiyah each Likut twice. Everything was Mugah twice, until after the Rebbe passed away, and then started to say that only one Ago. I heard this from someone who worked on the Sichas. So the Rebbe would buzz them in, ring the bell to say, come in, to get the Likut, to bring it to the light, working on the Sichas, to publish it. So he would walk into the Rebbe, and the Rebbe is still writing. He's still holding the Likut, and he's climbing up and taking out a sefer, looking inside and making corrections, writing and erasing. And he would stand sometimes for a very long time, and the Rebbe was still working on the Likut. And finally, the Rebbe would look up at him and say, "Nem shen ichel keim l'shnat." Take it. I'm never going to finish. Take it. It'll never finish. And on some level, that's what I felt about this. But Hashem atev yechaper. I hope I didn't mislead. I certainly hope I didn't. Was not over on that Indian of Magal Ponim Batei Shaleka Halacha Nish Richtig. But we're ready to finish the Maamar, and the end of the Maamar speaks to the whole Hemshech. Really, it's not the Perek; it's the whole Hemshech. That now that we explained, Ein Seif Lamata Adein Tachlis, in two Parakim, Perek Gimel, which described what Lamata Adein Tachlis is, and Perek Dal that described the nature of the relationship between Ein Seif and the Lamata Adein Tachlis, that he's everywhere, even in Klipas that everyday Adam. And at the same time, it's an Eifen that Ein Kodesh Kahavaya, Kama Kadishan in Leis Kodesh Kahavaya, that he's involved, Klipa, Elakus is involved in every place, but Klipa has no hold on the Eibishter whatsoever, on Ein Sof at all. So we're ready to finish the Hemshech. So the Rebbe sort of now, in this Maamar, finishes the Maamar in a way which gives you a sense of everything that's going to come till the end. In other words, he's holding Perek Dalet, which means that Rebbe Kvayachal has 6 more Parakim to teach, 6 more Basti Laganis to say, 6 more years to teach, until Tafshan Lamed, and we'd finish the first cycle. But in the Maamar, each Maamar is discussing one Perek, but there's Teira, and there's Avoida, right? The point of this whole Maamar is the Avoida. So as the Rebbe finishes the Maamar, he goes to the Avoida. And the Avoida is this whole discussion about Ein Seif Lamata Adein Tachlis. Lamata Adein Ket is leading to the union of Oitzer. And Oitzer is the koyach that the Eibishter gives the Anshe Chayil. It's given to the generals for the sake of the simple soldier who's going to fight the war of Mechamas Nitzachah to bring Melech HaMashiach with the Mesidus Nefesh, using the koyach of the Bizbaz Oitzeres. So the Rebbe sort of speaks to the Maskana, to the end of the Basi Lagani. The task is also the Linktree Shachanti B'Seichel Tzadikim Yishu Aretz V'Yishkenu La'ad Aleha. And this is done on days Kafi V'Shapcha. And the Machon for this is Karbones, and the Afich of Shtuz de L'Umot to the Shtuz de Gedusha, and the Afich of Sheker of Elim to Keresh and to Kesher of the Beis HaMikdash. And it's done through the Tzivos Hashem. And it's talking specifically when the Tzivos Hashem are fighting a Machon, which is called the Mechamas Nitzachen, where the Melech is Machnas Atzme B'Tachsisei Melchomim, Ba'avaz Beis Kol Ha'etzes She'otzru Avesav Avesav Avesav, and Mashlech Chayav Mineged. And the Rebbe explains at length L'Haven Inyan Ha'etzeh L'Mayla, to Yesh L'Hagdem Tchila Masher Kosav V'Tikun Ezer Ein Seif L'Mayla D'Kes L'Mata Adein Tachlis. So as we finish this Maamar, which discusses one piece of this sugya of Ein Seif L'Mata Adein Tachlis, the Rebbe begins like this: V'siyom ha'peireku, page Kuf Yud Beis Sif Tes. If you're following, if you have my PDF, which I put up on my site, I'm holding my number 97 on my scribble here. V'siyom ha'peireku, the Perek finishes. V'zehu l'mat amad Adein Tachlis. This is the pshat that Alakus reaches all Adein Tachlis beyond what could be considered a purpose. that godliness is radiating and revealed ad gam b'madregas hayeseh shveilim b'tachlis. Elokus is found in the lowest places, and he's revealed. You have evidence of Elokus in the lowest places. V'haraya, he creates and he gives life, and if you experience life, you know that life comes from somewhere, like the Rebbe said in earlier classes. And then after you discover that life comes from somewhere, you know it's not just that your life comes from somewhere, but your very existence comes from somewhere, even if you're klip. So you're aware of Elokus, and at the same time, the Elokus is not affected by our awareness. And immediately the Rebbe says, the program as the Messiah, as the program are going to follow. Perik Tazvov and Perik Tazayin and Perik Yud Zayin. Messiah is going to finish Biyar Ha'inyan Dere Seif L'mayla Din Case. Now that we explained in Seif L'mata Din Tachos, that in the lowest klipus, Ein Seif is found for the purposes of Ata Machaya Tike Machaya L'mahave. He's also going to explain that no matter how high you go, Ein Seif is even higher. Shagam Shom, that even the very highest world is ba'efin kazen in such a way shebachol mokem shenimtza, that wherever you're going to find Ein Seif. But now we're speaking on the highest madregas, which we're going to learn in Mitzvah Hashem next year when we review Perek Tezvav for the fourth time. Nimtza ba'efin de Ein Kates alakus. There is Ein Kates, meaning to say, in relationship to the highest worlds, Ein Seif is Ein Kates. But then the Rebbe says, however, after we explain the whole sugi of Ein Seif, as it's described in Tikkun Ezer with these two properties, Ein Seif L'mata Adin Tachlis and L'mayla Adin Kates. And as I keep on saying to you, it's not two parts of the Ein Seif. It's two characteristics of one Ein Seif. Ein Seif, every point of the Ein Seif is both L'mayla Adin Kates. That means nobody knows them, not even the highest levels, as well as L'mata Adin Tachlis. There's no place where he's not found and evident, even in the worst klipus. Says the Rebbe, both of these things, both the L'mayla Adin Kates, which is the higher idea, which we're going to learn next year, and L'mata Adin Tachlis, the idea that Elokus is everywhere, which is the lower idea. Nikroim b'shem Eir. In the end, it's called Ein Seif. It's the Gili of Ein Seif. It's how the Eibush is represented by a Matthias of Eir, Gili. Shenyane Gili. It's the notion of revelation of the Eibush. Even though we just explained Ba'arichis that Ein Seif's relationship with the world is above the creation altogether. Even when it involves itself in the very lowest creations, in klipus, and not just klipus that are called be'ekinim, but a klipus that are called she'el. Not only klipus koyachal that the Eibush creates, but klipus that do with people's avedas. In the madrega of Rishus, the madrega of Isra, madrega of Akalaparam Tesha Leika Alocha. Eini Misarev, Eini Mispol, Eini Mishtana. He changes the order again. First of all, the Lakus does not allow itself to get entangled. And in my humble opinion, the diuk of Eini Misarev means this is the kavona. The Eibush had a kavona that in Oir, that its relationship to the world should be in such a eifin of no Isarvus. And therefore, Eini Mispol, Eini Mishtana. In the Maamar, Eini Mispol and Eini Mishtana were explained first in Perek Vav and Zayah. And Eini Misarev was explained second in Perek Ches. But Eini Misarev is the Siba, and the Eini Mispol and the Eini Mishtana is the Mesubav. That because Klayochel, the Eibush created Oyer, in the kind of way that it should be everywhere, but in the way of Eini Misarev, it doesn't allow itself to become entangled. It always remains removed, like Yosef HaTzadik's relationship to his Malach in Mitzrayim. Therefore, it involves itself with every step of the creation, gives it life, and Eini Mispol doesn't respond to it, and certainly Eini Mishtana is not changed by it. Says the Rebbe, no matter how great that is, no matter how great Elokus is, and no matter how great our understanding of L'mayla Adin Kates is, and L'mata Adin Tachlis is, that it's everywhere and nowhere, Eini Misarev, Eini Mispol, and Eini Mishtana, that's not your treasure. In other words, Eitzed is not only not Ein Seif L'mata Adin Tachlis, Ein Seif is also not L'mayla Adin Kates. Eitzed is a treasure. And a treasure by definition means something which is hidden. And Ein Seif is Oyer. And Oyer by definition means something which is revealed. Even though the Inyan HaOyer is that L'mayla Adin Kates, nobody knows the end of its revelation. L'mata Adin Tachlis, no one can get away from its revelation. But it's still an Inyan of Oyer. And therefore the Rebbe says, Oitzer is Inyan Asosom, is something which is sealed away and locked away by itself. It's not a concept of being revealed at all. And accordingly, the Inyan of Oitzer is higher than the Klolos Inyan of Oyer. Ein Seif, both the idea of Ein Seif L'mata Adin Tachlis and even the higher idea of Ein Seif L'mayla Adin Kates. So in other words, Eitzer Ha'elyon is higher than Oyer. So what's Eitzer? Atzmos. What word do you want to use to describe Eitzer? If you remember the first shiur that we had, Tzidkas Pirzeinei Yisrael, the Rebbe said that Yachid does not Eitzer Yiras Shamayim, because there's still a Shikol B'tziyah, Shikol Tziyah, Gilui. And Eitzer is higher than Gilui. So now we're saying in Lamaila, and in Oyer is not Eitzer. So Eitzer is above the whole phenomenon of Oyer. It's a Lakus and a Madrega, which is Mamish the Eibishter himself. And he continues and he says, Eitzer that this treasure, which is beyond the idea of Eretz Save, Neistim lyhadus is given to every Jew. And it's not given because he's such a smart guy, and such a deep guy, and such a sophisticated guy, but Beglal Seitiv Esavaya, because he's in the army of Hashem. And he serves Hashem first of all with a Kabbalah sale, and second of all, V'gam Zeh Iker, with the Mesiras Nefesh, Kedei Sheyelech L'Milchama Be'elam, he should fight the war in the world. Hachel Mehamachama, beginning with the war, Imakel Zara Shebekir B'cha Zeh, beginning with the first alien, the first worldly phenomena a Jew encounters, which is the world within himself, the Kel Zara Shebekir B'cha, the Yetzer Hara which each person has within inside of himself. And we have to fight that Milchama, but that's not the beginning of the Milchama. The Hemshech of the Milchama is to make a deal Yisbarach B'tachtenim. Ideas Kafi V'sapch. Or Be'efin, and the way the war is fought is the Hanetzach Zeh Binyan Yerushalayim. The Dafka, when you need Netzach. Is there a possibility to be binning Yerushalayim K'di Isa B'Gemara? Hainu, this means that live Netzach Yerushalayim Shabei, to build Yerushalayim in a Yid, which is Yerushalayim perfect fear. And perfect fear is the Eitzer Yerushalayim, which the Rebbe spoke about in the Maamar Tzidkas Pirzeinei Yisrael, which is the prequel, the prefix to this Maamar. You have to have Netzach. Now, what does Netzach mean? Milchama. What does Netzach mean? Nisyenis. What does Netzach mean? Golus. And this is not a throwback to the beginning of the Basi Lagani. This is a throwback to the beginning of the Tzidkas Pirzeinei Yisrael, which is the Akdama to the Basi Lagani. I taught as one continuum. I taught it together, and I posted them on my website also together as one hemshech. That Staka Osla Kadosh Baruch Hu Yisrael Shepizron Lebein Umes Ha'elam. Hashem did us a Staka that He scattered us amongst the nations. What is this Staka? So of course, Bepashas, it means that when one year is suffering, another year is able to do a mitzvah form, the whole business. But the real Staka is that these hardships bring out Midas HaNetzach in a Yid. You have to fight. You have no choice. And this Midas HaNetzach is Megala the Eitzer Yiras Shamayim. So the meaning of the statement V'Netzach L'Binyan Yerushalayim means in order to build Yerushalayim you have to have a test that's equal to a Mechamas Nitzachin that requires accessing the Eitzer Yiras Shamayim. That if the goals wasn't so hard, if you're living as man abayis, where your avoid is not so hard, you wouldn't reach so deep into the neshama. So you wouldn't have those hardships, and that's the taich in the pasuk Tzidkas Pirzeinei Yisrael, that to reach presence to Yisrael, which is to bring Mashiach in a way that it's Rav Tuv Yisrael Beruchim Shebagashmias. You have to have Tzidkas Pirzeinei Yisrael. You have to have the idea of Nisyonis. That's how the Rebbe explained it in the first shiur. And only then is the Binyan Yerushalayim Yerushalayim Eitzer Yiras Shamayim. When is a Yid revealing the level of Yiras Hashamayim, which is the Mega of Eitzer? If you remember the first shiur, the Rebbe went through so many things. There's Yiras Ha'einish, there's Yiras Chet, there's Yiras Halakim, there's Yiras Havaya. And Yiras Havaya, there's the Yira from the second Hay, and the Yira from the Vav, and the Yira from the first Hay, and the Yira from the Yud, and the Yira from the Keitzer Yud. And all of this is Giluyim. And Eitzer Yiras Shamayim is higher than all of those Madregas. And Eitzer Yiras Shamayim is only revealed when you have Hanetzach Zeh Binyan Yerushalayim. The worst tests, the worst gullus. And that's my diksiv, Tzidkas Pirzeinei Yisrael, Tzaka HaKadosh Baruch Hu Yisrael, Shebrizin, V'num Se'elam to Megal, this Madrega of Eitzer. And he says, V'ninyan Zeh Naseh, and it's actualized. The revealing of the Eitzer Elyon, and the utilization of the Eitzer Elyon. And ultimately the Binyan Yerushalayim, Adav Eidos, Eitzer Avodah of every Yid Ve'ef, and Shal Mesiras Nefesh, on a level of Mesiras Nefesh. Shalamai la'afilu, that's even higher from the idea of seichel, but the very highest level of reason, the very highest level of anything which has any basis or form for justification. It just goes to the very essence. We have to have a hardness and a toughness which has no bounds, and this hardness and toughness which has no bounds, has the koyach to defeat the worst klippas, and the koyach for it comes from Eitz Yireh Shamayim with the Eitz Elyon. Shehu inyan Eitz Yireh Shamayim, which is the idea of treasure, of fear of heaven, which every Jew possesses. Because every single Jew is a piece of Elikus Mimal Mamish. And the Rebbes says Bechinas HaYechida, but the Rega of Yechida, but Hashem Shemakabelas Miyachid. Because in the beginning, I wrote on the margin on page, it was Mitzayit to Tzadik Dalet, that the Rebbes says that even Yechida is not Eitz Yireh Shamayim. It's also Madrega of Giluyim. So the Madrega of Eitz Yireh Shamayim is the Nitzitz Beit Yachid, which is Misyachid, with the Nitzitz Kot Niver, which is called Yechida. Yechida Shalel. The Jew takes this treasure. Why? Because of Hanetzach. He has no choice. Hanetzach. And the Melech is Machnas Asam Tachsisi Melchama. And the Melech is Mashachayav Meneged. And the Melech is Mevazbeis called the Eitzah She'atru Avesav, including the Eitzah Ha'elyon, which is higher than it ain't safe. And the Eitzah Yireh Shamayim. And Yehudi Lekech Eitz says that the Jew takes this treasure from within his neshama. And the Koyach that he gets from the Eibishter. Umevazveis ba'aveda b'mesiras nefesh, and he expends them in a reckless way in the work of mesiras nefesh. So azai masech b'machon, then and only then are we successful in the war. And then pale he causes shemevazbezim is eitzes shalamayla. So here the sequence is that the eitzes Yireh Shamayim, which a Yid reveals because of his nesenis, is the cause, and that eitzes ha'elyon is the consequence, is an effect. By us revealing in ourselves the eitzes Yireh Shamayim, which is a Madrega of Elikus, which is higher than Yechida, we're zeicha to access the Eitz Shalamayla. Now, looking back to page Tzadik Hey, near the end of the Maamar Tzidkas Pirzeni Yisrael, the Rebbe says it could be like this, it could be like this. It could be that the Eitz Yireh Shamayim reveals the Eitz Elyon, and it could also be that the Eitz Elyon reveals the Eitz Yireh Shamayim. But here it's written that the Eitz Yireh Shamayim is Magal the Eitz Elyon. And in footnote you test it says, I'm reading it inside, the bottom of Kuf Yud Beis. When we say that the Eibush has an Eitzah, which is so deep and so hidden that it's higher than the Kol Sinaved in Seif, and he's Mevazbeis for Vanetzach Zubinyan Yerushalayim. Nichlol Gam, a part of the treasure is Kolos Inyan Des Gal Salakusa. They tzadikim they did tzadikim Amagal Alakus. Like it says in Shari Yichad V'Emunah, in the beginning of Perek, hey, that the Metchila Olam Machshava Liviris Elam B'Midas Adin. The Eibush wanted to create the world with pure Midas Adin. It's explained in not why. Because the words create pure Midas Adin, it would be very exacting and very precise. But then the Eibush saw in Elam Eskayim, the Midas Adin would be too much Elam Behest. So Shitaf Ime Midas Arachamim, he hybrided, he partnered into the creation Midas Arachamim, so there should be a possibility for the world to achieve its purpose. And the Alter Rebbe says in Perek, what is the sheet of Im Mitzvah Nachmim? It says Gaus al Kus Aidei Tzadikim and Eises and Meifim Shabbatera. And I heard from the Mendel Futterfast, the Mashpim Hamzachanain Gekocht, that the Alter Rebbe says first of all is Gaus al Kus Aidei Tzadikim, and second of all Eises and Meifim Shabbatera. So the Rebbe says you should know that the presence of a tzaddik in this world is sheet of Im Mitzvah Rachmim. It's the Rachmanis that the Eibush adds to the Bria, which is by itself Bereshis Bara Lekim, only Midas Agavora. But you know how deep a Rachman there is, that this Midas HaRachmim is the Madrega of Eitz. It's higher than 18 safe. Yet the words, Nichel Gam Kos is Gaus al Kos Aidei Tzadikim, is the Madrega of Atzmus, which is higher than 18 safe, which is higher than 18 safe, Lamayla Din Ket, Lamata Din Tachlis. That's what a Rebbe is, that a Tzadik is. A Frat, Aidin Siyadar, especially by the Rebbe the Nasiyadar. Ashabos, Areish Gufa Azel. That the way the Nasi goes, the whole generation goes. And his presence itself is the Gili Ha'itza. And when people follow after him, they're connected to that Ha'itza. V'gam kasher misala be'il yacharil, even after the tzaddik goes up higher and even higher. And of course the Rebbe is referring to the fact that it was after Yud Shvat. No matter how high the tzaddik goes. And l'cheiret means that he's farther away from Elam Hazagash Mevachumri Mikoma can nevertheless layaz Evtain Marisak the Rebbe Rashab. The Rebbe Rayat wrote about this because his father Rebbe Nishmasid. He never abandons his flock. Just like before when he was in a Sham of a Guf Begashmi Bepasha that we could see. He served. And like the Rebbe wrote in the Maina, I don't know if you know this Maina, it's a Moedendika Maina, that during the Pashas HaSfarim, and today is Gimel Tevis, so Chamisha B'Tevis is Loved, it's Sunday, it's in the next 48 hours. Noch weniger. So the Rebbe was needed to, however you want to phrase it, write his own job description, how he defines his job. I was in the house of Rabbi Avraham Sheptev, who's the maski Yeshiv Reish of a good Chabad, of a Guch. And so he has a picture frame of the Rebbe, and in the corner he has the Ksaviyat Kedesh of this. So I pointed, so it's Kemlish Gazette. I said, no. Where the Rebbe had to describe his own job. And what the Rebbe writes is, my first job is to be a dugma chaya to other people to follow in terms of Avodas Hashem, limited Torah mitzvahs. It's unbelievable to see. The Rebbe is describing himself as a person for whom klal kam before prat. His avodah pratis comes after the avodah klaus. That's a Rebbe. It's not normal for any human being to say, my first responsibility is to you, my second responsibility is to myself. And of course you always go back to the Leisikim Shakela Tafshin Yud Beis, where the Rebbe cried bitter at Treren. And it was very clear that the Rebbe was talking about himself, where the Rebbe said, I don't know where I'm going because for me it's Garnish Geblieben. It's just the Shlichus. It's just the Indian from being a Dugma Chai for other people. And Achakach Ba'avidasi B'tor Prat. My Zaydi Shusterman Al Shalom, Ramardcha Shusterman told me once that he was a printer. He worked for the Rebbe before Tafshin Yud. So he would go into the Rebbe when the Rebbe was still called the Ramash. So on one occasion he went into the Rebbe and the table was piled high with papers, letters and whatever it was, and it looked like a clutter. So the Rebbe gemach mit hand, hashlech aleim sarchei tziva. The made sense. Dispose on them, throw onto them community service. The end of that pasuk is, it's a Rashi in Pashas Ba'aleis Chavein Kolin Me'aleim. The Rebbe describes himself as a person whose first obligation is to the community, and his second obligation is B'tur Prat. And I would say a step further, that the Rebbe, Deir Ashvi, our Rebbe, the Rebbe's a Gezunzain, made that a hero for us to follow. The Bosa Reish Gufa Ozel includes this, that the Erste Zach is the Avodah of Naftom mit Yenim. The Achakach Bo Avodah B'tur Prat. In other words, the Rebbe wrote it about a Rebbe and Nasi, because that's every Rebbe. But Yeshleim Derech that when the Rebbe wrote it, he was writing it because he felt and he holds, he felt and he feels and he held and he holds, that every chosed has to be in this avodah Bosa Reish Gufa. Erste Zach is Mekarav Yenim. Und noch is Mekarav Zich Alein. I know that's a very radical thing to say, but it's a hemshech of Oitzer. The Oitzer, the Madrega Balakus, which is represented by this Gal Salakus Adei Tzadikim, means the Rebbe the Nasi Ador, which is higher than the holy and Avein safe. It's higher than in Seif Lamata Adin Tachlis. It's higher than in Seif Lamala Adin Kate. It's higher than in Agilui. And its inyan is that first of all there's Tzei Maris. So therefore, even though there was a Yud Shvat, he continues to bring everything on in a revealed way. In a way which is good, that's visible and revealed. There should be no pain and no suffrage. Because of the presence of the Rebbe the Nasi Ador, this Gal Salakus Adei Tzadikim, and Malahal and Afkan Emedu Mishamish. In Eifen of Tev Nidav Nigle, we see B'mochas Gili Eidin Sav, the revelation of Eidin Seif, and even higher than Eidin Seif, Eifen V'Shachanti, that the Eibush is revealed in the world in the way of Shechina, rests, like it says in the pasuk V'Nigla Kavei Davaya V'Ro Kol Basayachta V'Gem. So these few lines are from one of the other two Maamarim, either Shabbos or Friday night, Shabbos afternoon or Friday night, and the Teichan Advarim is that the Eitzah Shir Shamayim, he lists the Eitzah Shel Mailo, and the Eitzah Shamal does not only include a Lakus, it includes the Gili Lakus Aidei Tzadik. The top of Kufid Gimel, V'neis Nimlein is given to every single Jew. Kol Hein Yakar, the greatest of treasures. Shunai Le'yesra Filim Eidin Sefet, even had Eidin Seif. That even though Eidin Seif is a Maila Adin Kates Lamata Adin Tachlis, this is even higher in people. And this is given to every Jew in order to fight this Melchamas Nitzachon, to bring about the Izgalos of Melech HaMashiach. And the Rebbe continues on page Kuf Yud Gimel, the last paragraph. This idea that there's madregas of Giluyim, there's madregas of Eidin Seif, including Ein Seif L'mayla and Kes L'mata Adin Tachlis. But higher than all of that is Eitzer HaElyin, And this Eitzer Elyon is parallel in the Nefesh Adam, what's called Eitzer Sheyireh Shamayim. It's consistent with the classic Yer Aleph Nissen Maamar. I think this is true. I'm not this kind of chassid. I'm not one of those people who's trying to find a psaza, chiddush. But I think this is a fact. That the Rebbes, the Yer Aleph Nissen Maamar is the Maamar b'yei ma'ashta yasi yatav shalom Aleph. The Rebbe verbringt it off this many times, right? Beginning with Tafshan Lamed Aleph until Mem Hey, and then after that he verbringt Shabbos. Quarterly Yer Aleph Nissen, as he wrote in the Minus. And there's many Maamar Yer Aleph Nissen, but usually my Maamar of Yer Aleph Nissen are Pesach Maamar, they're Yer Aleph Nissen Maamar. When did the Rebbe say a Maamar Yer Aleph Nissen, which is a Yer Aleph Nissen Maamar? And the answer is this one: V'yei Ma'ash Yasayim Nos Livnei Yosher, which today happens to be Zois Chanukah. I got on a plane early in the morning. I flew from New York to Florida. I walked into a shul and they were holding Be'an Arachitz, Brich Shmei. So I walked into the shul and I leaned, and you leaned Zois Chanukah Samizbech amongst them. V'yei Ma'ash Yasayim Nos Livnei Yosher. Al Shein Gulasam Shei Yisrael, like the Rebbe brings in the Medrash. What's that whole Maamar about? That whole Maamar is about the notion of relating to the truth in the purest way. And relating to the truth in the purest way is that even Alakus, even Atzilus, and even Ein Seif is not a non-nesiv malka. It's a tzir, it's a metzias, it has an achiza, even though it's dvekes and it's alakus and it's achtas and it's bitl and all the other good things. So the Rebbe says that idea of a non-nesiv malka, that I want dich and dich alein, like the Alter Rebbe says it, is consistent with the idea of Eitzer, which is higher than Ein Seif. It's consistent with the idea of Eitzer, Yireh Shamayim, which is even higher than the Madrega of Yechida. Zeo gam calls in these Medrash Prat and Medrash. Mo Shalom Melech, it's analogous to a king. Shenichnas Medina comes into a country. V'hol Yemeduchs and Ifrechin v'chol, there were dukes and other kind of officers named Ifrechin. I don't know what it is in English, but I'm sure it has a name in English. And the people had to host. So everybody's hosting who they can benefit from. How can I manipulate the government to my advantage? Chad Omar Nonasif Duchsin Lagabi. I'm going to host the duke. I'll have this advantage. Chad Omar Nonasif Ifrechin Lagabi. I'll host an Ifrechin, which will give me another advantage. There's one smart guy, and he says, I'm going to host the Melech. Why? Because Kulam is Chalf and a Malkalam is Chalf. From a king, you can get no favors. From a king, there's no shtick. You're not going to be able to manipulate the king to give you an advantage. The king is going to do only what's emes. But if you're a Pikeach, you'll be mavated on whatever advantage you could get from hosting a Duchs and hosting an Ifrechis to host the Malka, because Kulam is Chalf and the Malka Leim is Chalf. It's the absolute truth. And this, Amonasiv Malka, says the Rebbe, is the Madrega of Eitzer Shel Yireh Shamayim and Eitzer Ha'elyim, which is even higher than Ein Seif Lamayla than Ketz Matachas, higher than of Yechidah. And he compares that Vishmatzin, Abavidos, Sharabein, as Zak and Alter Rebbe would say in the Pasuk. It's the last Ayem Yem of Yud Ches Kislev. Mi li b'shamayim im chalech v'atzli ba'aretz, and which means, what do I have in the heavens, and besides for you I have nothing on, desire nothing on earth. And he would say in Yiddish, Zeh, right? Ich will nicht dein Gan Eden, I don't want Gan Eden atacht, and ich will nicht dein Gan Eden, I don't want your higher Gan Eden. And if I'm not mistaken, the lashon is, Ich will nicht den Elam Haba, ich will men nicht as dich allein, I want you and you alone. Kamesh Kosav at Tzemach Tzedek, the Tzedek writes it in the Sherish Mitzvah Tefillah, when nit was nit the parts of Gam Bitfus, it's printed already in the Sefer Dech Mitzvah. That the Alter Rebbe said, Dich allein, I want you and you alone. The Atzmus Mus, just the Eibush himself, I want nothing else. And Dich allein is the Eitzer Elyon. Dich allein is the Eitzer Yireh Shamayim. No Giluy. And the Rebbe concludes by saying, Vinyans and Nidrash, Mikol Echad Ve'echad, this is expected of every Jew. Sheyeh Ta'ev L'Malka. Our taiva should be to an Nesiv Malka, to relate to the Eibishter on a Madrege, which is so simple, it's even higher than Yechidah. Eitzer Yireh Shamayim, Eitzer Elyon. Hayra Sheyir said that a person should desire Ha'atzmos by the Eibishter himself. Shalamai Legam, which is even higher from the Bechina of Ein Seif Shalamai Ladin Ketz Lamat Adin Tachas. Now, of course, you know from the Ma'avat Tetzaveh, where the Rebbe writes that mi hu zeh ve'ezahu, the shavashayches the madrega the Alter Rebbe. The Alter Rebbe said v'im chalei chafatzli, and the Rebbe explains in many siches. V'im chalei chafatzli is the idea of Mashiach asol asov tzadikaya b'teyufta, that even tzadikim do tshuva. This is v'im chalei chafatzli. So the Rebbe says in the Maamar of Yat Tetzaveh, how does it do with me and you? And the Rebbe answered the question minei obey. How come it was told to us? An inyan which has no shayches to us, we don't know. And if we know it, that itself is a proof that has a connection to us. The connection to us, the Rebbe says, Efes katzeu, shemetz mimenu, every year to the shayches, to be toyev lamalk. Inyan zepel yudus b'avidase. And we reach this. We access the Eitz of the Elyon, Eitz of Yidei Shamayim. She'ein misbal mishek, the Elam are not moved in a negative way by the lie of the world. Ba'adrabah to be shoy Davidase, b'mesiras nefesh serve Hashem with a mesiras nefesh of shtus the kedusha, foolishness, crazy, idiocy, above reason, of holiness. And through this mahapcha, you transform the lie of Elam Azal liyes mimenu kedesh. La mishkan liyizbarach, a board for the Beis Hamikdash. Shaydei poil, this affects the inyan of a shachanti b'seichem that Hashem should dwell amongst us. Dira liyizbarach b'tachtenim, that Hashem should live in this whole world, not just in the Beis Hamikdash, but the whole world should become a dira liyizbarach. And the meaning of dira hu shabon nimtza atzmas hamelach meishahu, the king is found in his etzem. And Adam dar sham b'chol atzmusim. That you have no levushim. Atmos is mizgaz with any garments. V'nimtza sham b'giloy, the eitzer of atmos amhus, the eitzer of Yidei Shamayim. Dicha lein is revealed in this world, and we accomplish it. And it's nifa, we're doing the aved of dira b'tachtenim, and ourselves reflect us in the whole world. And this is the end of the Maamar, the end of the Shir. And the Maamar, you never finish. On Maamar Basi Legani from Tov Shin Chov Dalet. And like the Chazal say, the Gemara says, the Halacha says, Hanichas Beis Hamidrash Eimer, Vayetza Beis Hamidrash Eimer. I hope that I was not Geidim Hepech of the Kavanah and the Rasna the Eibishter. And the Mitzvah Hashem, next time we're going to go back to Lamed Daled and do a Maamar on Chanukah. And now I'm a little bit behind, but I did the Basi Legani first. To Shabbos, and Afreidach and Zeh is Chanukah, and Hatzlocha Dikei Chamisha B'Tevis.